Morning guys, just see if it comes through first, because the last one I think the codes were out, so I'll just give it a minute. Yeah, it looks like I'm here. Right guys, just a bit of an update from the UK. I thought I'd do one while I'm here. It's been interesting because I've been watching the news in Spain around the COVID scenario. It's been different bits of information from different types of people, which has made it interesting. Also, if you can't hear me, just mention it. Just in case the mic's not working. I'm trying some new software out, but I think it's going through okay. So I don't always fully see what's actually going through or not. But yeah, I mean, there was talking about government assistance for businesses, but then when I was looking through it myself, what I've seen is government loans in Spain. Now, I'm not being funny, a lot of businesses are very hand to mouth on a regular basis anyway, because a lot of them are very small. So a loan will not help them short term, medium term or long term. They just need to get back to normal. So I think it was yesterday or today, there were strikes in Torrevieja. There was protests in the streets. There has been areas, I think in Italy, where businesses have been opening in protest. Quite simply, they're being wiped off the map, because they can't sustain this long term. Even now, we're not even seeing figures of business closures, because realistically the damage is not even being shown. But I'm going to take this from different perspectives today, so don't start shooting me down, because I know some of you guys will be more worried about where the virus is heading. Glyn, hi Matt, either I've gone deaf or you may mic isn't very quiet. Okay, give me a sec, mate. See if we can turn that up. Hello. Looks like it's working okay this side. I don't know if I can adjust it anymore. Let me have a quick sec. See if we can adjust anything on it. Volume. Look, volume. Is that any better? Hello. I can swap the mic over. Let's try the other mic. I'll switch that one on, that one off. Is that any better? That might be a lot louder now. This is a different microphone. One's more sensitive. Okay. Check your volume then. If you want me to go back to the other mic, let me know. But that's the built-in mic now, where the other one's the bit more hardcore one, the giant size one. You want it louder or it is loud? Okay, because it's hard for me to check this stuff, because obviously I'm here on my own, so I can't hear it. Okay, I'll leave it as it is for now. Yeah, back to the business issues. The problem is, I don't think we're getting enough warning of what's actually going on with businesses, because the impact's a lot bigger than you're actually seeing. I was reading today around the shipping crisis at the moment as well, because even with shipping containers coming from China to the UK, the purchase, because you normally buy the container, a container was $1,600. The quotes currently are around $10,000. So there's not going to be a high risk of prices shooting up. Prices are going to go up. I mean, there's some stupid stuff which is realistic. For example, trampolines. You know, you have these giant trampolines for about 100 quid. They could have a price hike of about 50%. But don't get me wrong, I do know we import a lot of stuff we don't actually want, need, or even works properly. Although to be fair, stuff I bought most recently, very little of it's been bad. But then again, I have been paying a bit of a premium. I mean, for example, I don't normally spend 15-20 quid on a whisk, but this is for frothing my weight loss sachets. But I spent extra on it simply so I didn't get a bad one. So things like that, you're sitting there going, well, I fleeced myself really, because you can get cheaper ones, but I can't trust them. So I bought an expensive one that was recommended. But yeah, there's some major shifts coming, and the businesses are being severely affected. I'm not sure what's causing the shipping crisis at the moment, because I haven't looked into that. I'm just seeing the impact relating to people trying to move goods into Europe, etc., because the shortages are substantial, which will obviously increase the cost of goods. Is it short term, medium term, long term? Got no vision of it right now. I'll have to have a look into that, but it's just a bit of a warning that we can see some price creep coming up very soon. Another one was, I was reading somebody from the border force or whatever they do. Glint, our taxman is happy though after Brexit. Oh yeah, the interesting thing about that one is I was trying to order something for Amazon UK for delivery in the UK, but it was sent at my Spanish address. And there's only about 20 quid's worth of goods, but they wanted £6 import duty. So yeah, the taxman's doing quite well out of this, the old customs and excise especially. But what I was seeing is they were talking about the don't blame Brexit for this is somebody who works for the border force or whatever. They were complaining that people hadn't been filling in the documentation properly. But I have to admit, if you've dealt with the COVID situation as well with these various agencies, it's not been very clear with them either. So I can understand where they're turning up with the wrong paperwork and somebody having to wait an extra 24 hours for their fish imports because they put UK instead of GB. But at which point would that have not made sense for somebody just to change it from UK to GB, or in fact just recognise them both because it's exactly the same place? It's all a bit peculiar, but I do see that this is going to be ongoing for the whole Brexit and cost stuff. Is going to be ongoing for the whole year and into next year easily. I know in the around the Alicante region, it's the worst it's been for 40 years. So you're not talking a small recession, you're talking about a massive decline in the industry. And then obviously the Spanish government have put out now that they're not welcoming holiday makers till June, July, well, end of July, let's just say, because they want at least 70% of the Spanish population to be vaccinated first. Now, this all gets to where I'm a bit concerned, where the vaccine is becoming to be forced. Because it's like, oh no, it's not forced. It's just we won't let you travel, we won't let you go in any shops, we won't let you leave the house unless you have been vaccinated. But it's not forced. Yeah, tingles more than my job's worth to change the form. Yeah, that's what you're dealing with though. It's not even. I'm not being funny. I get stuff that comes in from my contractors, and I browse it and I'll send it straight back. Like literally, before I accept it, quick look. Oh, you've missed this, and just send it to them. Like literally, you filled in you've missed this part. You need to put this in. No, way you go. Now, don't get me wrong. It's bureaucrats at what they do. It's the same when you go immigration or whatever. If you filled it in the blue form, you should add it in the green. But they're exactly the same. They're not, because they go to a different person to fill in. So yeah, it's one of those. But obviously they're going, no, it's not the Brexit, and I'm going, well, just me. Did they fill in the form before? Well, no, they didn't need to. Well, then that is the Brexit.
Glintar, lorry driver got £300 fine because Kent access permit ran out after waiting 2 days to check paperwork. Yes, I also believe after 2 hours there's £50 an hour fine relating to parking, because I think where the processing is, it's similar to the motorway services where you only have 2 hours free parking, then they fine you for every hour afterwards. It's similar there, and obviously they're getting stuck in the queue. But whose fault is it? I mean, the truck drivers generally will only process the paperwork they're given. They're not writing it. It's done for them. The reality is there was 4 years transition. It hasn't really been ongoing. I don't think there's been enough engagement with companies, which could have been done at the ports. Let's think about it. The one place you want them to actually grab a truck driver and grab a company is at the ports to say, look, this is the form you need to fill in, this is how to fill it in, and it's coming in next year, and then you do it in 6 months, and you note them down, so when they don't fill it in this time round, maybe you can find them because they know which forms it should have been. But it's a bit like the COVID scenario. I mean, the whole testing thing where Boris was on about locking the borders down just before I flew back to the UK, and what he was actually talking about was just getting rid of the corridors, but he made it sound like the country was cutting itself off from the world. In fact, very little had changed. The air corridors weren't that large anyway by that point, because the UK had been cut off by other countries before Christmas, remember, because that's when that other strain come out. So a lot of these air corridors had already been closed. But then I get people messages going, oh, I don't think you can fly to the UK on Monday because the borders have been closed. Then we look up, it's like, no, it's all exactly the same. It just means at 4 o'clock Monday morning they brought in these other restrictions. All it was an increase in restrictions. So I had to get a test before I left Spain, €120, but it was I wouldn't say it was a better test than the one that was £185. But they did 2 tests. The first test was actually checking if you had any of the antibodies of that in your system, and the other one was actually to test whether you had COVID. So one's sort of saying if you've got a low level of this in your system, it'll pick it up, and the other one says if you're ill, it picks it up. The one in the UK didn't do that. So the Spanish testing was A, cheaper, B, better, but C, she did really stick those things up my bloody nose. I tell you what, that was painful. I'm not looking at doing that every time I travel to Spain. Tingles, they were still negotiating in December, just no time for training, testing, new processes, hence problems. Not really surprising. No, but a lot of these documents would have been documents that would have done pre-EU anyway. They would have just been revised. But I've just seen, I think it was yesterday, Sunderland, is it Honda? Was it Honda or Toyota? One of the big car plants, they're doing the hybrid battery things up there, because it's not as bad as they were expecting out of the relationship with the EU and the UK. Because one of the things that did come out, I think that was last year, is I think there's a zero tariff between cars coming out of Japan and Nissan. Zero tariff cars between Japan and Europe. In other words, if you make a car in Japan, you don't pay import duty to take it to Europe. If you make a car in Europe, there's zero tariff for imports for European cars into Japan. Tingles. I've had a few contracts there. Good. You know better than I do. I was just listening to I think it was a union rep up in Sunderland. I think it's good for the business. I am looking at Tesla a lot more lately as well, to be fair. They seem to be shooting ahead. I could say shooting for the moon. I know that side's ongoing at the minute, but they've got a new HVAC device they're looking at rolling out. They're also looking at the autonomous vehicle market, where you could basically have your car fully automatic, which would mean that you could basically Uber it without actually doing anything with it. So for example, I could park it outside and it could be driving out and about by itself, basically taking people wherever and then bringing the car back. So the main thing is making sure nobody damages the car, I suppose. But there's an estimate on that you could, as a Uber type driver, be making $30,000 a year. Now assume that'll be very similar to the UK, probably about 30,000 quid. But then obviously you just got to watch for licenses for inner cities, etc. But if it's full electric, I don't see that being too much of an issue. But if you've got a car off driving by itself, which to be fair they were talking about for this year, so I'll keep an eye out on that one. The same as there's 3 new Tesla car models that are going to be under $30,000. So I'm interested to see where that goes, because that maybe had a little business opportunity if you get in there quick. Yeah, the HVAC one was another one out of the Tesla. I'm very interested in where they're going with the satellites. I'm very interested in where they're going with the whole space exploration piece, because I'm not expecting it to all be evolved this year or even in the next 10 years. But it's just nice to see, when all this negative stuff's going on, somebody's actually propelling themselves forward business-wise. Tingles is the most efficient car factory in the Nissan empire, even more than Japan. It's definitely the best factory. There you go. So that's another reason why they probably kept it invested. It'll be one of their A, they've spent a fortune on the plant already, but B, they'd be very keen as a flagship. Also keeps their foot in the door, because obviously it's if they've got that relationship with Europe, because let's face it, the majority of those cars will be heading into Europe, I guess. Then obviously the transportation's a lot less if they can get past Kent and Calais. But I think that'll sort itself out in the next 6 months. I was thinking 3 months, but seeing that we've got a shipping container crisis as well on the horizon, I think there'll be more traffic on land as well. So it's a real mess at the minute. I've been back at work this week, and it's took me a week to get up and running at work because we've had some IT issues and other problems as a business. So it's been nice to actually get online and talk about something else, because I've been focused on just getting operational again, which has been painful. But yeah, I mean, Spain's talking about 70% of its population being vaccinated, and I'm just interested to see how they'll force that, because it's a fairly socialist nation, let's be polite. So I'm not sure how they're going to enforce it on people. I think there will be problems there. Tingles, Elon Musk was talking about taxi drivers buying self-driving cars, actually fully autonomous in the future. Yeah, that year is 2021. That's it. They're on about that being available this year. I suppose this is part of this satellite thing he's been up to. Jack O'Neill, Matt, so you have any thoughts on crypto Bitcoin? Bitcoin, invest low, sell high. That's all I can say on that at the minute. And I'll say that simply because I don't know where the peak is, because it's not related to it's not a tangible asset at the minute. Now, I've seen I think it was the Bank of England put a warning notice that they won't let you liquidate Bitcoin back to cash. Now, liquidity is a big issue. Bitcoin, a lot of people invest in it as a asset, but without the liquidity, it's a problem. If you can't buy a car with it or something else, that's a problem. That's the tangible part. It's good for trading. It does have a high value now, and if you can get it out of there, I recommend doing it. There are ways to get the money out, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, I'm not sure where the peak is on it, because we're in a environment which is created through a lack of trust. Let's be honest, if you trusted your government about the vaccine, then the rollout would be much smoother. If you trusted the information around the COVID coming out the government every day, the trust would be there to stay at home or whatever. But a lot of people do not trust the information, and that's been ongoing, whether we like it or not, or agree or disagree. But the fact is, the trust is a major problem. So this stunts investments in things like cryptocurrency, because they're outside the realms of the banks, etc. But bearing in mind, a lot of companies have moved into those realms already. There's no illusion this is independent. It's just got different people controlling a lot of it. I mean, Bitcoin, a lot of the original people still control the majority of the Bitcoin. In my mindset, and you can check Bitcoin wallets to see where the majority is held. And one of the key tips of that is when they start moving money, jump, because they dump it. They'll dump it, turn it into money, wait for it to crash, then buy it back. This is why they're extremely rich. But as long as you know how to play the game, you can make money on it. But I invest in crypto. I made a lot of money on crypto, but at the same time right now, it's got to a point where I'm just sort of, right, I've missed the boat on this. I'll have to wait until it drops, and then when it drops, I'll look at it again. Right now, I'll be a bit wary, because everything's hype. You know, it's all on a promise, and they pull it as quick as they give it. just be careful on it. If you want to make money on crypto, put a little bit in and invest on a YouTube crypto channel, and lots of people will be trying to get you to fund things for them, to promote it, and you can make some money on that. But that's the best advice I can give at the minute. AB, Spain is uneducated, equals uninformed. To be fair, it depends what circles you move in, because if you look at, there's a lot of people I know that are very well educated, and they're very similar to me, where you just shrug off trying to get involved in trying to explain stuff to some people or whatever, because you know they ain't going to change their minds. You just don't waste your time on it. There is a lot of educated people in the UK, in Spain. In fact, the NHS is using a lot of the educated Spanish medical staff. But I would say there's a lot of more. I think there's a lot more anti-government people. It's why when you say Spain or Spanish, sometimes people just argue with you, saying, "Well, I'm not Spanish. They're Basque. They're Catalan, or this or that." There's a lot of diverse groups in there that you can't keep everybody happy. There's a lot of people want to be separate kingdoms almost. At the same time, other people just want to just get on with their lives, which is why the Catalan scenario is a bit interesting, because I think that's a bit like Brexit, almost 50-50, which is why it goes backwards and forwards, because a lot of people I know, they get stuck with the problems there, and they just want to carry on. They're not bothered which way it goes. They just go on it their daily lives. So many things aren't just cut and dry. That's one of the things I've noticed over the years. So yeah, you just got to. There is a lot of people that are stuck in their ways. I would definitely say that. Glyn, so much for Spain, always being sunny. I noticed a big storm in Mallorca yesterday. To be perfectly honest, depends where you are. we didn't get much. I think we had one day of rain while I was back for a month, so I can't complain. But bear in mind, it's still the start of the year, so you can't do a real comparison on that one. It's a bit like the Philippines, 12 hours of sunshine a day, but still get typhoons. It's AB, nothing new to see here. Spain is used to dictatorship. Nobody revolted during Franco. They just waited until he died. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's the politics in Spain is a bit more diverse than the UK, because I think they have a lot more smaller groups. So some stuff can get locked into the parliament where nothing really moves because they can't get it through. I mean, you look at the periods of time where they've actually had no control in government because they couldn't agree amongst themselves what that government looked like. Now, to be fair, that suits me. Business as usual, where they're not actually doing anything or disrupting anything. I can work with that. It's when people start changing things backwards and forwards, and then you get this, it's going one way, then 4 years later, 5 years later, it's going the other way, and you get the whole yin yang thing, which makes it a bit of a mess. Yes, tingles. I bought a toasted cheese sandwich with it, Coinbase debit card. Yeah, I've got to admit, that's where my account is. I transferred money back to my account years ago, into my financial accounts, before it was looked at for legislation, so I managed to avoid a lot of the issues. But yeah, the Coinbase is pretty good. Although I think, is that being bought out? It's involved with the American banking system, isn't it? Because I know there were some buyouts looked at a while back. Jack O'Neill, brilliant. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, you're welcome, mate. AB, because Spain is regional, not national. Yep, exactly. Because it's like the Philippines. Local mayors have a lot more power than they. For example, I'm sat in Northampton, and the mayor of Northampton will have. In Spain, you end up with, like, for example, Torrevieja had uncontrolled construction because the mayor approved everything, even on land that was protected nationally, which is why he ended up, I believe, don't quote me on this, doing 3 years in jail. I think Ibiza, for example, has a family that are often elected, and they're the same. They control it, and yeah, it's regional rather than national. And obviously, this is where you can have some of the issues around people wanting to have their own little kingdoms because they gain even more control. There is a area where there's a mayor that's socialist, and the whole area is socialist in the sense of they all work together. But even then, some of them are having to venture out because it's not a sustainable model. But even then, I looked at it from a perspective of some of the smaller stuff I've seen over the years, like a fishing village. And socialism can function quite easily in a fishing village because there's not enough outward influence to distort it. So the point is, at a local level, you're relying on each other, which means it can function. But if you get to a certain point, it no longer functions because it's sort of sitting somewhere between socialism and crony capitalism. For example, where you need party members on the board of a business because they know the business makes a fortune. And we can see that in other parts of the world where that occurs. I'm not sure if that occurs in Spain. I have no knowledge of that. But it could be very similar to the Philippines, where a lot of that was generated somewhere between the last 300 years, where the lands and everything else were controlled by the tobacco barons and whatever, and their descendants have maintained control ever since. So yeah, I think this is some of the issues that regularly occur in the Middle East when we try to destabilize some of this. For whatever reason, it then comes back and bites us on the backside because of the loyalty issues, and there's just too much control over some of this stuff. Danny KL, I'm at. Do you think the UK tourists will be allowed back into Spain before the end of summer? I think this. Now, I stress this is my personal opinion. Now, reading the media yesterday, where they're talking about the figures starting to come down, my personal figure, this is purely me, we're coming to the end of the flu season. So I expect the numbers to start dropping significantly in about 3 weeks' time. I expect that there'll be a reanalysis of the figures relating to things like pneumonia, flu, and other issues that have been calculated as COVID, in my personal opinion. I stress this is my personal opinion, which will then be a retraction, which seems to be a pattern that's occurred since this thing occurred. Now, the reason I bring this up is Spain is being hit quite hard at the moment. Even on the coast, they've moved. When I first arrived in Spain, it was a curfew at midnight. Then it went to 5 p.m. and now I believe it's in a lockdown where my wife is. So the point being is they're at a tail end of the flu, in my personal opinion. So I expect some of this is a knee-jerk reaction to where we are currently. The government's had to push something out to say we're going to stop this, we're going to make this happen. Now, don't get me wrong, the businesses in places like Benidorm, Torrevieja, and all over the place are having protests because they can't afford it. And it looks like the government initiative around this just talks about loans. Well, a lot of these businesses are hand to mouth anyway. I know several of the local ones we use, the people aren't even doing it for a living. They do it for something they did for years. They live mainly on their pension, and they just like doing it. So I don't want those businesses to close, because the point is that they like doing what they're doing. They may not be financially generating to a point that they're going to get rich anytime, but they like pottering around. But those businesses provide a lot to the community, so it's important those businesses stay. And I don't think a loan scheme helps. I think a zero tax scheme and some other bits and pieces may help, but one of the things I do want is to see some exit of this, which I think will be March. That's why I keep saying March will be where you've seen the numbers drop off. They come back with a plan to push forward. I do think they're going to focus on getting this vaccine pushed as hard as they can. But looking at the manufacturing side, I think they're struggling to, I know they're struggling to reach demand as it is. So although they're saying, we want to get more people vaccinated, in reality, they currently are struggling to do that because they can't manufacture the stuff quick enough. So it's all a bit peculiar. But I am hoping end of March we'll have a better picture, and I think at the moment you're going to get things which are often knee-jerk, then retracted later, in my personal opinion. AB, not the end of the flu season just yet. Who just said that the PCR was too sensitive, and so they are bringing the test sensitivity down as a number of cases should go down. Yes, I agree with that as well. That's what I'm saying. You know what I was saying about the quick retractions. They weren't doing that before Christmas, were they? So, but now there'll be, don't worry, we've got it all under control coming out, because there was a bit of a push on making things sound worse than they really are, in my personal opinion. And now some of that will be a retraction up till March, because one of the things they do want is to increase the number of people that have the vaccines. AB's Spain wouldn't exist without Brits and other tourists. It would, but it's a transformation, because Spain was always there. But one of the things you had there is there is a massive need for Spain and the UK to work together. The UK is reliant on Spanish food, so that isn't likely to change. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, this is the thing with globalisation. All this stuff has been set up like this for years. It was the end of the World War II, I believe, that there was the whole, I can't remember who came out with it. It was basically to make sure the UK population could always feed itself. Well, it still can't, because the population growth has exceeded a level where it's sustainable. But often it's a case of the produce we choose, and I do say we choose, is often cheaper than the UK produces, because Spanish lettuce, for example, and the same with tomatoes and things, because I like organic tomatoes, but you compare that to a factory grown one which is thicker skinned, gassed from green to red, all that lovely stuff, and you compare how many people buy one to the other. People are buying the gassed ones, and a lot of them don't even know what actually happens to them. Not to the person, to the tomato. But the point is that is the reality of the world. We are in a globalised environment. This is why, while the small shop down the street has been struggling like mad, companies like Amazon have flourished, because quite simply they've just kept going as much as they can, and they have a bigger objective out there. I mean, one of the things is they haven't do is altered their business model. I know Bezos is on the old moon race at the moment. There's a lot of stuff heading for new tech, and that's where I'd say keep an eye on, because that's where the new power is, whether we like it or not. AB, well, that's Spain. As can't export the beach and the sun, you can only export so much olive oil. Yeah, but they could, if they chose to, actually increase their solar production significantly enough to provide electricity to other countries if they choose to, but they don't. Because that's one thing I would look at doing, was actually increasing the electricity through solar and other renewables, and spike it onto other nations. Hang on a sec, I need my power cable. Nearly out of power there. Oh, yeah. So yeah, I mean there is. Yeah, well that's it. I mean they've only recently got rid of the tariff on producing electricity, because they still wanted the tax on the power, even if you produced it for yourself and for your own home. Which just seemed absolutely ludicrous for me. But then again, I believe they've got the same issue in America, because they hate the off-grid guys. Because I think outside New York they've had a few issues there. Cause, you know, when you start deep welling or water gathering and stuff, they don't like it, because you can take yourself completely out the tax system. Not that I'm saying it's a sustainable model for all, but I think this is where I do think Tesla has a bigger vision of being more self-sufficient and less reliant on state-controlled things. But don't get me wrong here. You'll then become reliant on Tesla. You're just replacing one entity with another. But I do like his technology views. I do like the way he's moving things forward. I think he's a very proactive guy in trying to revolutionise things that exist or don't exist yet, but he's got the cash to do it, and he's not just sitting on it as a stakeholder or a stockholder. He's actually trying to change the world, which is why I like him. I like the way he moves forward. Yeah, so I think March. I've mentioned this before. I got back to the UK. March is the place we need to focus on. Everything up till then will be up and down with figures, fear stats, negative stats, positive stats. They'll just keep changing. It's a bit like what was it they come out with yesterday? About the new strain of virus may possibly be worse than the current strain, even though I don't think it changed the mortality rate, and the word may instantly means they may be making it up just as much, in my personal opinion, because if it's not increased the figures, and what is it worse, they didn't actually state what was the difference. You just get to the point where you're trying not to watch the news. Messiah, can you tell something about farms in Spain? Alicante, I wish to buy a plot and make a farm. What about water access for farms? There's a lot of farms have their own reservoirs, etc. I mean, if you fly into Spain, and as you're coming down at land, have a look out the window, you'll see a lot of farms store their own water. Now, how that is collected and what tax on that, it may be different for the agricultural market, but there is a lot of farms I find that are not producing. I think some of this is down to possibly the cost of labour, because obviously minimum wage will be quite high when you're producing oranges, for example. So you'd need to be more automation to make a small plot viable as a business, unless you were doing it yourself. Doing marmalades and other bits and pieces. Because one of the things you do have is a lot of people grow exactly the same stuff. One of the things I do recommend as a business, though, is have a look into things like palm trees. because the palm tree market, the palm trees are quite high value items, so that may be worth having a look at. And there is palm farms around, but there is this I'm not sure it's a worm or not, but if you get that infestation, it'll wipe out your entire stock. So that's another thing to look at if you ever look at a farm. Check what's on there, because I believe there's only one contractor in Spain that can deal with the infestation, which means you could be on a waiting list for probably a year or so, because of the way it is, and obviously it won't be a cheap thing. The only reason I know about this is because I was looking at Igor open a campsite a couple of years back. It's one of those things, well, I put it on the back burner because of the location, but that was one of the big problems, is needed to get rid of all the existing palm trees and that on there, because they were all poisoned. There was a big issue with them. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the flowers, for example, I think they go up to the Netherlands. There's a lot of production in Spain, so it is worth looking at. Organic farming seems to be going a big way, and there may even be opportunities there for selling organic meat and produce, because the landlord of my place in Spain, that's what he does. He actually is an organic farmer. They've had that farm for over 300 years, and he would be a good point of contact about farming. But I would say you get in touch with people already in the farming community. If you can get hold of some people with a similar sort of setup of they moved over and did the same thing, that they already know what all the hurdles were, and that's what I'd recommend having a look at. Simon, Tesla's a play on an autonomous taxi. According to Kathy Wood, investor, 8% margin in that area compared to selling cars. Yeah, definitely. They're looking at going fully autonomous this year, I believe. So I'm waiting for that to sort of jump forward. And with this satellite network he's putting up, I can see America going that way a lot faster than anywhere else. But it makes sense from a Tesla point of view as well. But then I expect the big cities to come on, then it'll be expanded out from that. So yeah, there's definitely a market there. Marco Giuliani, from land in the south, expensive now due to value in avocados and mangoes. Yeah, there you go, there's a market for it. I need access to lots of water. Yeah, I mean, it may be worth looking into other farms in the area that have reservoirs. I mean, it depends how big you need to go, because if you've got the cash and looking to go large scale, you may be worth looking at reservoirs and what you can absorb onto your farm. Your neighbours may already have reservoirs for other things, and you can start absorbing them. But it's not a market I'm into. It's not something I'm heavily involved in. But yeah, I mean, avocado. I think isn't avocados quite a heavy reliance on water, in the sense of it uses a lot. I think it does. I think that might be one of the issues. But like I said, I don't know enough about the market to actually say what size plan you need what size farm you need for the size of a reservoir, etc. for a season. But yeah, it's definitely worth looking into. Yeah, I can't say anything else. That's about as much as I know on the Spanish side. I mean, the Philippines done a bit more on the Philippine side, but not in Spain. Yeah, but with the Tesla stuff, I think they'll focus on the cities first, because you can imagine, like London, if you have a lot of these self-running taxis, no driver required, the focus on mapping that out will be quite quick, in the sense of it's a very focused and dense area, and the taxis could be just running themselves around, and fully electric gives them a bit of a flexibility for movement in the cities. I think Bristol, for example, I think they've got an anti-diesel thing now, so there'll be another city that would benefit from it. But also you've got to bear in mind, 9 times out of 10 the car's sat outside. Even if you go to work, the car's sat there. You're there, you may be in the office 7-8 hours a day. That's 7 or 8 hours that car could have been out driving by itself. but obviously you want to make sure it's charged when it comes back and you want to go home. But I think it's going to be an interesting year on that side. I think there'll be some protests from taxi drivers once that stuff gets fully realised, because you may want to do it as an investor, and as such would be a case of buying a car and possibly just setting up with Uber with the right insurance, etc., and off it goes. And that would hit that market pretty hard if people did that. Keenan Akil, good day, mate. Thanks a lot, love your videos. Thanks, appreciate the comment. Hope your day's going well. It's a changing world at the minute. I do think we have to, just like I said, just hold on till March. Eric Glanfoss, I missed your comment there. Do you still work with the facilities that would handle plastic waste and make fuel from it? Yes, I do. We're still looking. We've got some discussions going on next week actually, with the Philippines, because we're looking at trying to get some of them in there. If you're interested, make contact. Did you email me, by the way, and I sent you the contact of somebody? Did he get back in touch? Because if he hasn't, give us a shout. Because the problem I had is when I went back to Spain, I went into family mode. So where I normally deal with a lot of the business contacts and stuff, I cut all that off for a month, simply because a load of stuff I'm looking at, but I wanted to do the family stuff first and that stuff later, because a lot of the deals we're working on will take months to get through anyway. But you've also got the other side of this at the moment with the current state of play with Brexit, with the shipping container issues. Moving stuff around is a lot more difficult than a average year. It's a very difficult year and compared to others, but out of that normally comes, as the saying goes, out of chaos comes opportunity. So we are looking at things like air purification systems. That's another thing we're working on at the moment. It originally started with air purification for large scale, for cities, to try and clean up some of the city air, but we've now got it for public buildings and stuff, and sort of from public buildings downwards down to office size. So we've got a lot of stuff going on. Marco Giuliani, buy Spanish property now or wait? Spain, I believe from reading an article, are going to invest in developing the cities this year. They're going to build around 500,000 houses from what I read. So on the coast, I think that market may dip, in my personal opinion. Now, one of the problems with the housing market is it hasn't had a massive fall since the 2008 recession. And the reason for that being is that a lot of the people that are still holding on to it will have sort of either locked into negative debt where they had to pay it off, or they've got to a point now where they just feel that it's not worth selling the properties. So a lot of the properties are just stuck. Keenan Akil, your videos are part of my daily life since 2019. Thanks a lot. Hope to see you soon in Spain. I appreciate it. I'm glad you find them useful. So yeah, back to properties. Yeah, so properties I do think should drop. Now it doesn't mean they will drop, because you've got banks that control a lot of this property, so they're not going to be too keen to dump property into the market and lose money. They'll try and keep hold of it as long as they can. Now in the UK it also occurred in a different way, because what you've had when that recession was going on at the UK, I was involved with the Gordon Brown's administration, not me directly, but I was involved with the housing, and there was a whole ream of stuff done in the background to buy up properties to stop the market collapsing. Now in Spain, I'm sure with the control the banks have got, it's at a similar state where they're wanting, say, 140,000 for a house, and they do not want it to drop below that. You may be able to go in there now and say, well, I'll give you 120, and they may take that, but they'll still advertise at 140,000. So one of the things I will say is just have a cheeky cheeky offer. You may win it, you may not. I found that you can drop as much as 20% on a property simply by just making an offer below market rate or what they're wanting. Because some of this may actually be the real estate agents pumped a bit extra on for himself as well. So yeah, just be quite shrewd with it. But if it does collapse, I'm going to be one of the first to buy. But like I said, I don't know where the market's heading right now, because it should in theory be creeping down, but it froze last year. Yeah, there were small drops, but a lot of the drops weren't what I call real drops, because if you'd done some aggressive offers, you'd have got the same values. So I mean, you do get a seasonal price change between summer and winter. It's about 4%, but also there may be some people wanting out of the market now, but it's very hard to gauge, because I know a lot of people are sitting on things. I mean, there's houses opposite me have been empty for 6 years, and they don't even lower the price. You know, you can go and ask the same person you did 3 years ago, and they'll still want exactly the same money. Well, what's weird is they want the same money, but also they won't rent it out either, because they're worried about having bad tenants. So they got a house they can't get rid of. But I'm sitting there thinking, well, they must be nearly 70. Surely they'd want the equity out of it, just to, even if you went out and just spent it, because the property's doing absolutely nothing. They don't use it for holidays. They just come out and tidy it up now and again. It's all a bit weird. CBI 1968. Heard from Sean, expat in Mazaron, that Spanish banks are charging a fee for receiving money from UK. Have you had this happen? I've not moved any since last year, so we'll wait and see. I spoke to my bank, and they'll charge me going to the UK, but not from the UK. But it must depend on your account type. Because I spoke to my bank manager 2 weeks ago, because there was talk of a hike on the bank charges to, I believe, €250. Because Spanish banks often charge for having a bank account, but my bank account was what was it? How much did they charge? 360. They were charged about 120, and that's gone up by about €20 a year. So I mean, if it got to 250, I'd have just moved banks completely. But it is a difficult one in Spain. They're not the easiest banks to deal with, because they're sort of locked in. There has been people mentioning their online banking. I've got to look into that myself. It's only because I'm trying to tie this mortgage in at the minute that I'm staying with the bank I'm with. Yeah, there you go, Glyn. You've got to remember that interest rates could go up to pay for this crisis. Exactly, they will go up. There's no other way to get any more money out of people. They've squeezed them dry. If you've got a import-export issue around shipping containers, paperwork, administration, additional charges, put the majority of the economy to bed and stop them working, we're into a very peculiar state of affairs. We're not even talking about, let's be honest, we are not even talking about where we're heading with this stuff, which is the scary bit. Everyone's COVID. The media's focused on that. Same with I've tried not to say it today, but the Trump administration, it's been COVID, Trump. I'm sitting watching the news and going, I'm not American, so I don't really care about Trump. And it's not me being negative, but the media is often negative, so I can't gauge the information I'm given about Trump. But COVID, I can look at the stats, I can look at the people around me, I can look at the information, but the US side I can't touch with a barge pole, because the misinformation is so strong from all sides, in my personal opinion. CBI 1968, the 70-year-old stuck unable to sell, maybe equity release could be the answer. It could be. I mean, the problem I've got is I think some of the people don't want any help because they're a bit ashamed that they got caught in the house. And I mean, I've had businesses I've lost money on over the years, but that's just part of life. You know, you've just got to dust yourself off and get back up. You get hit hard sometimes, and other times you make money. But part of that is just waking up to the fact if you're hitting 70, either you want to be in the equity release or at least renting it out or doing something just to liquidate it. Because if he'd rented it out 6 years ago and we'd managed it, he would have had let me work out how much money he would have had. I'll be able to tell you if come on, phone. So that property is currently on the market for 100,000, which you'll never get. So he would have had he would have recovered 19,800 and predominantly in cash. And the reason I'll say it's in cash is, guess what? Because that would have been a long-term tenant giving him the money directly through his bank, or whether he went round on a Friday, whatever. He would have got 20% of that money back nearly. And on top of that, he would have had somebody in there that would have been maintaining it for him as well. So yeah, but I know some of them have worries about getting the wrong tenant in, because the laws are a bit difficult in Spain. But I do find myself, if you look for the right tenants, you can avoid a lot of the problems. So, or you can go down the Airbnb route, go license, etc., put your rates up to accommodate the extra costs, and their locations would sell themselves. Obviously not this year or last year, but the previous years definitely. There wouldn't have been an issue renting them out because there was a shortage where we are in high season. Maybe until when are the restaurants etc. closed? I at the moment don't know, because they may extend it, and this is the thing. The shops are open because my son's just been out this morning to get some eggs because they're making a souffle. But the restaurants and stuff, I would probably think a couple of weeks. Review 4th of Feb here in Malaga. Yeah, so I do think, well, that's probably not far off. It's a good guess off the top of my head, is it? Yeah, it's probably about right. Yeah, about 2 weeks. Because Spain seems to review it periodically rather than every day, which is what I think this is where the confusion happens in the UK a lot, because there's too many updates and not enough. Just do this for a fortnight and come back. We'll come back to you. Where Spain seems to be more, we'll do this for this month, or we'll do that for 2 weeks. Off you go. It's the same with the schools. They sent out these packs to the schools with how to deal with everything prior to the school starting back, so the parents were well informed. The same as they use WhatsApp groups and other things to keep the parents and the schools very well connected. So yeah, it's maybe 2 weeks I'd estimate. But also bear in mind the end of the flu season starts creeping at that point, which is why I say March. I think we'll start to see the rise of normality, unless we get strain 4.2. I don't know if anybody else has noticed. Any of these other strains actually any different? Because I know they talk about extra strains being more contagious or whatever, but has the impact on the individual been any more severe? Because at the moment, like somebody mentioned earlier, the testing has not been correct, they've been overly sensitive. So the false positives will be en masse, which means the numbers, because as soon as they go, positive, I'm like, not interested. Those positive numbers have no benchmark. They haven't taken the same 1,000 people and benchmarked them every month. They've took these numbers, like I said, altered the test, all this sort of lovely stuff. You've got nothing to compare it against. We don't know how many people had COVID in the first 3 months, because statistically there was problems then, and now we've got statistically problems now. And the revised figures around things like pneumonia and stuff are yet to come. So this goes back to something I was watching about a week ago. It was actually about false media, fake media, and they took it back to the original Trump election, and they took some parts relating to the current or the just finished Trump election, and they were talking about how they did things like slow speech down so it made people sound drunk. They talk about how they rewrite things, and they used computer generation to make people say whatever they liked. Now, the thing is, this tech is a lot more readily available than people realise. But the problem you got now is, before it was a case of governments recognised it as a problem, but now the governments, in my personal opinion, and they did mention it actually in the documentary, the governments are just as bad. They're doing it. So the problem you've got is, this all leads to one big problem we've got right now. Trust is probably at the lowest it's ever been in history, because you've got access to a ridiculous amount of information, but you can't confirm what is true or not unless you're physically there yourself. Now, when Duterte in the Philippines was doing his election piece, there was a lot of negative media saying there's nobody at these rallies and all this sort of stuff. Yet there was people I know that were there, that uploaded videos while they were live. And I trust these people. They're not politically associated or anything with the current president. But there was multiple people in the same rallies, completely different areas. And guess what? There's probably 250,000 people there. And yet you're getting news media as if there was 9 people. And this is the information. We're in the years of misinformation and the death of trust. And this is why you can't say something as a absolute, this is a statement, because like we've had with figures, they get retracted. So the trust is gone. It's like if you went to your doctor, and your doctor said to you, "Oh, you've got cancer, Mr. Jones," or whatever. You go home absolutely devastated, worried about this, and then 2 weeks later, a letter comes through. It says, "Sorry, there was a problem at the lab. You haven't actually got anything wrong." How's your trust now? Do you trust next time they say, "Can you come in for another test?" You're probably thinking, well, they got the last one wrong, so how can I trust this one? And this is the problem. The information has been so diluted and manipulated. We're in a very strange environment, because people are more isolated now because of these lockdowns and things, and relying on things like the internet. They're relying on the news and other bits and pieces around them. Yet people are pulling at threads, because even simple stuff, because people don't have to agree with me. That's one of the things I always say. Don't have to. You do your own research. But you pull at threads and you start to think, hang on, this isn't right. And it could relate to many things in your lives. But the point is, you go, there is something strange here. And when you start doing that, you start to see there's a lot of problems in many things. It's very concerning. I'm way down my list now in comments. Hang on. The numbers have been so random. They have, and it's the whole retract, put back, whatever, and nobody's gone back to day one and done an analysis month by month and said, look, this is what we told you, and this is the actually corrected figures. Because I don't think they actually want you to see that one, in my personal opinion, because you start to see that, don't get me wrong, if you're over 60, this is a very high risk thing. But if you're under 60, I don't think, and you haven't got other health conditions, I don't think it's as bad as they're making out. Don't get me wrong, you will get ill. I'm not denying that in any sense of the word. But myself, I've had some bad injuries over the years. I've had some illnesses. I had dengue. Dengue nearly killed me. But you know what? Dengue, I still went out after I'd got rid of it. I didn't go while I was Well, I had it simply because I'm infectious to other people through mosquitoes. But the point being is, it didn't stop me getting back to the normality. Didn't stop me going back to the Philippines. Didn't stop my daily lives. I mean, don't get me wrong. While I was ill, it did, because I couldn't go from the bed to the bathroom without passing out on the floor. But at the same time, look at it. I'm back. I recovered, and it wasn't the end of the world. That's all I'll say on that one. Maria B, I've read that when your house is empty and the homeless may enter it, you can't get them out. Is that true? Yes, that is true. It's not just homeless, by the way. They have yeah, there you go. AB Maria, half true. Very, very difficult to evict squatters. Yes. Also, I mean, I've seen it even on the news in Spain, where people have gone away for a 2-week holiday out of Madrid and come back to find people have moved into their house. There is a lady I know where she went back to Ireland, come back, and she found that she couldn't open her door lock, and the guard who advised basically they could come out, but they would have to prevent her moving back into her house. But they recommend what she actually does is just wait with a locksmith when they're out, change the locks, and she's retaking the place over. And that was their advice, otherwise you could be stuck in the legal system forever and a day. Maria Beale, so why don't the owners rent their houses for a lower price to avoid that? Yeah, there's two different things here. In the cities, there's a housing shortage, which is why Spain are talking about building 500,000 houses this year. This is for Barcelona, I believe, Barcelona, Madrid, and other locations. There's a massive housing shortage. They don't need to lower their rents because there's already people paying a premium. So what they're actually doing now is actually dealing with that by pumping housing construction into the market to help offset the current situation, because the construction market in Spain is a very big part of their economy. Glint, dealing with squatters isn't high priority, unfortunately. Yeah, but it's not just that. The legal system in Spain is more towards the tenant and not towards the landlord. And this is part of what you get in an environment that's more socialist based. It's a bit like when Marcos was in the Philippines. If you could pay the tax on the land was yours. That's one of the things he did while he was there. It was a change, or it's the way the government's set up. It's a difficult one to remove people in Spain. Where did I get to? CIBI 1968. AB, I'd move and play drums and bass music 24 hours a day. Guarantee they would leave. AB, owners don't want to rent out because you gamble your property with the tenant. Yeah, that is one of the issues. But one of the ways around that is screen people. I've got to be honest. I'm a little bit fussy on who I rent the properties we manage out to. I generally look for people that are retired. Just looking for somewhere that is comfortable, safe, and we can deal with most of the day-to-day issues for them, because we're looking for long-term tenants that haven't got financial issues, haven't got the problems when you first move out, and in the first 6 months it's an absolute nightmare. Don't get me wrong, we're not against it. It's just the fact there's when you first move out to Spain, the first 6 months will be hard. First thing is you need to get out of holiday mode, but the second thing is finding work is not as easy as people often assume. Bar work is obviously oversubscribed. You've also got to compete with people from Estonia, Ukraine, Latvia, and other places that have an advantage over the average person coming out of the UK, for example, because not only do they speak their own local languages, but they often speak Spanish, Norwegian and English, and a lot more used to the bars, and often can work cheaper. But I think some of that's actually changing in a similar way to when the Polish come over to the UK, because originally they were taking farming work, etc. Now it's more a educated environment, in the sense of they want better jobs, so they've got educated. I remember we had a labourer from Poland. He put himself on the Prince 2 and got himself in it. Now he's project managing. So that's why I think the last run of farming labourers I was aware of were from Moldova. So the point is, people progress. So that may actually be happening in Spain, but don't quote me on that. AB, my cousin, got dengue in the Philippines. Yeah, it took me ages to recover from that. That really hit me hard. I think it took me to fully recover, about 4 months, I think. Jack O'Neill, exactly. A few years ago, I went 6 months being told I had a kidney cancer and prescribed suicide pills. Turns out to be celiac disease. Yep, that's what I'm saying. So, but you imagine this is like me. I'm in front of you. I mean, I often will actually stress the fact that this is my opinion and whatever. I'm not telling you everything I say is fact. I try and avoid that, because one of the problems I have, if I got the stats from the government today and I touted it, they could retract it in a week saying, oh, we got all the numbers wrong. But I don't want to do another video to actually go, well, hang on, they got numbers wrong. And I'm not here to run the government or state down or anything like that. What I'm looking at is how we get through the situation we're in. That's the important bit. I'm not bothered about Boris. I have no like or dislike to him. He is not my concern, because if we haven't got Boris, we're only going to get somebody else of a similar mindset. It's as simple as that. This is what career politics creates, in my personal opinion, because their focus is themselves and not the country or whatever, the greater good, in my personal opinion. Maria B, every year I rent a property, spent my holidays, pay a lot for renting it, would love to go for 3 months or so, but it costs a fortune. Do you negotiate your rent down though? Because sometimes you can, if you can get hold of people direct, you can negotiate some of the pricing. A few people I know have done it, because originally they were coming for a month, 2 months, and then got stuck with a lockdown and are still there now. But their rent, they managed to drop them probably about 30%, simply because a lot of the time the rates are higher, because they may not rent them in the quiet periods, but it may be easier to take a quiet period with 2 peak months, if that's what you're doing, and you may get a discount on that other month. CBI 1968, my son's friend's 16-year-old friend had a call at 3 a.m. to say his mum had passed, and then they phoned back at 9 a.m. to say they got the wrong person. Yeah, I mean, this is what I'm saying. I've been through all this myself. There's certain things that resulted in both my parents' death which the NHS fundamentally are responsible for. Their misdiagnosis, etc., etc. But at the same time, says, "Oh, why don't you sue?" Well, what's the point? And it's not, because it's not going to bring them back. I'm not interested in the money, and all I'm going to do is put the insurance premiums up for the NHS. I'd rather they just did their job properly, to be perfectly blunt. Myself, I go private as much as possible. I wouldn't even tell you who my doctor is here, but I know who my doctor is in Spain. Tracy Bushnell, UK relies on a lot of Romanian, Polish and foreign workers to fly over and pick all our summer harvest. One of them be able to this year as a little cost to them. I think there is already additional costs relating to, I suppose it'd be licenses of some description. The reason I'm aware of this is my wife does some consultancy work, and they're talking about there's some fairly large fee for her to be allowed to do the work for a company in the UK. Now, we have found a solution for all this, because you just go through something like People Per Hour, Upworks, or something else that works online. And if you are looking in Spain, that's what I'd recommend as your first stage. If you've got certain skill sets, those types of outsource industries can work well for you, because you can set that up today, be doing this work in your evenings or whatever, and actually helping towards saving towards your move over, while building the relationships, and get a few long-term contracts set up on there. You're laughing. because you'll have a decent income before you even you're hitting the ground running. You've got money in your pocket and you've got sustainable income. And then once you're in Spain, you transfer over to Autonomo, go through the whole you do the Autonomo so you can get your healthcare, do your pension contributions, you're in the system, you're in the long-term part of the integration. At the same time, because you're paying your tax and everything else, everybody's happy. So that is something I would recommend having a look at if you have some skills that are transferable. Gets me onto something very, very practical. Good point. I don't know how we got. Oh, we got it from the guys from the farming, which obviously they can't remote work for the farms. But the industry in the UK has changed. I've been fighting for years to be able to work remotely because I do a lot of stuff on CAD, I do a lot of stuff on spreadsheets, etc. But most of the business I work with have this obsession with wanting to see you in the office. And I'm sitting there going, but that means getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, spending 2 hours on the train, coming in here to work, and then 2 hours on the way back. I said, I'm losing 4 hours a day that's completely non-productive, that you're not paying for, just so you can see me doing what I can do at home on a computer. Oh well, I know what you're saying, and that's what I used to get. I know what you're saying. It's sort of like, I know what you're saying, but I'm not listening. But it seems that the market's changing because they've had to, and businesses will recognise the huge cost savings by not having those silly offices that aren't required. Now, one of the other things I do have, which is over in this corner, this is my Oculus headset. Now, these are sort of being pushed at the moment for gaming, and I've got another channel specifically for this, and I'm only just going to start doing videos probably today on that. This little fella, I can do meetings in. The software is already there for it. I can also walk around 3D models in it, which means I can do my bits on the buildings in there, and it can go to a server that is set up in not in this business currently, but in the future, the information could be updated directly in there. So if I need a measurement, say, of a window, I could go up and touch the window, and it will give me the information relating to that window. Just an example. Don't assume the business is that high tech yet, but you can do this. It's just that we're not set up as a business for this yet, but that's where I want us to go. That's the level of technology I want. But you can wear that and basically have a conference meeting with everybody in the same room. So you can have your headset on, and there could be 6 people that you normally work with all wearing the same headsets, and it's as if you're sat in the room together. So when you do have to have a meeting, you can be in the same room. So you know who's there, you can talk to each other, you can see each other. You can have like a virtual office. I'll put some of this stuff on my other channel if you're interested, but it's where the tech's going. The Oculus headset Quest 2 was released by Facebook. I mean, it's Oculus, but Facebook own Oculus last year. This is the Quest 2. Now, there has been other headsets, but what's unique about this one is it's got an Android processor and everything built in. So this doesn't need to be connected by cable to anything. It can be run by itself, but I can also connect this to the Mac, you can connect it to a PC, and there's different software setups for doing different things. But the price of this is significantly dropped. Well, the price on this is significantly dropped, which means that this is more practical for a lot more people now, which I think will drive down the cost overall. So I would say the VR market is something definitely worth looking at for the future, because we're heading more that way. Now, where this is also very useful is in Spain, along the coast there at least, you can get somewhere between 300 to 600 megabytes max internet connection. Now, the VR headset's like 600 on a local network, but if you had that on a full-blown system, that'd be more beneficial. So that is very, very useful, and that's where I'm taking a lot of interest in this stuff at the minute. Where do we get to? CBI 1968. I wonder how long it will take before other countries follow suit and leave the EU as the UK have done. I guess they are waiting to see what happens in the aftermath. Yeah, well, I mean the thing is, for this to unravel will take about another 2-3 years. Because one of the things you've got is, although we may not be going to UK Parliament anymore, the representatives of the countries will still have an engagement, which means we still need at least the same number of bureaucrats, if not more. Because it depends if we're engaging with the EU or individual nations, or how that setup is. We're probably going to end up with a lot more bureaucrats. It's probably going to cost us a lot more on that front. And the rest of it, I think, will just be a wait and see with a lot of nations. But yeah, I think that one will be ongoing, but be at least a few years. Tracy Bushnell, give anyone over 55 a living wage to live on and let the youngsters have all the jobs. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, a lot of things in life are about sustainability. I mean, if you're sustainable and have a general awareness, I think a lot of people are quite content. I know I am, because I mean, I do get slated sometimes when people say, "Oh, you don't have a big house in Spain," and it's like, I don't want one. You know, it's like I don't have a swimming pool, but I live next to the beach and I live next to the nature park. Neither of them do I have to maintain. But at the same time, I've got that natural beauty. I mean, the parks, I believe 34, 36 kilometres. We cycled it, I think it was 34 kilometres. But it's a large area. It's a lot of natural beauty there, a lot of birds, different times of year. Got the beach. I'm looking at a digital rover as well for going underwater, just to explore off the end of the matter. But the thing is, I think most people, if they're content, they don't need that much. And I think one of the problems, like you're saying, over 55, I think a lot of people start to reach a point where they're content with what they've got or want, or know where they want to be in life and direction wise. So yeah, I've no issue with that. Keenan Akil, how is the car? Is it fully fixed now? I hope so. It's about 8% there. It needs a catalytic converter next, because the one on there they've drilled out, and I think that's why it's creating the problems for the filtration system and the filter issue's still there. It's not as bad, don't get me wrong, but I need to get the cat before it damages the system again. So that's next on my list, but obviously I'm in the UK at the moment, so I'll probably look at ordering one next payday. Well, not this payday, next month, and then look at fitting that when I get back. But yeah, don't you wish life was easy? That's all I can say on that one. But the thing is, if I buy a new car, I lose money when it comes out of the garage. It will get the Spanish kiss, where people bump you within a few days, so it'll get scratched and damaged quite quick. This car, once I sort this issue out, I mean, don't get me wrong, I could drive to Madrid or wherever now. Madrid's 4 hours away. I'm confident it wouldn't have any issues. It's when you're in the town, this is why I want the catalytic converter replaced, because then that should be it, and then do what we like. But now, with the troubles I've had with it, I'm not worried about it. It's not like it's your little baby or something. Now it's just an A to B car. I've had so much hassle with it. That love of the vehicle isn't there anymore. But I don't want to buy a new one unless I have to. Yeah, Tracy Bushel, if your belly's fed and you have your freedom, it's everything. Having survived losing lots in life and ups and downs is changes in priority. Yeah, exactly. Being content, you know, it's sometimes for people it's a good book, sometimes it's just being around family, sometimes it's just having your own space and being alone. Everyone has what they want in life and what they want to see and achieve, and I do think that's the bit that I think a lot of people don't see it until, like you say, in their 50s. I mean, myself, my ambitions have changed because I used to be concerned about pushing forward and getting higher in the business, but these days it's purely family. You know, spend time with my kids, making sure we get the house sorted, all that sort of lovely stuff. It's not about money anymore. Money's completely gone, and I'm not really interested in becoming the CEO of a multi-billion-pound company or something, simply because you end up losing everything else. I mean, I'm not going to get into the feminist stuff, but why there's not a lot of people in those positions, it's not because it's a man or a woman, it's just often those roles are soulless. You're committed to it. That is your marriage. Your marriage is to the business. You're living for the business. Everything else is secondary, which is why often those people are divorced or single, often have a very peculiar way about them, because that's how they sit in those roles. For the average person, they wouldn't want one, because it would change you, and often in a way you wouldn't, well, pretty much always in the way you wouldn't like. But yeah. Well, anyway, guys, that's a quick 1.5 hour chat. I'm gonna go and have a coffee, so catch you guys later. Thanks for spending your time with us today, and have a great week. MyTube, hi. MyTube 2, hi. Hi there, mate. I've just seen your message in the other messages. I know I talk a lot, and I miss messages sometimes. But I'm going to try and do these every week now. Now that I'm back, because I'm stuck in a 10-day quarantine at the minute. But at the same time, it'd be nice just to have a chat, just see where everybody is every week, see what's going on, see what's changed in the world. And like I said, wait till March. At the moment, I wouldn't plan too much at the minute, because everything keeps changing, the rules keep changing. But by March, we'll have a bigger picture. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. Take it easy and have a great day.